that I have ever known. Don't know where it goes, but it's only me and I walk alone. I walk this empty street on the boulevard of broken dreams, where the city sleeps and I'm the only one, and I walk alone. I walk alone, I walk alone. I walk alone, I walk up. My shadow's only one that walks beside me. My shallow heart's the only thing that's beating. Sometimes I wish someone up there will find me. Till then I walk alone. I'm walking down the line that divides me somewhere in my mind, on the borderline of the edge and where I walk alone. Read between the lines what's fucked up and everything's alright. Check my vital signs and know I'm still alive, and I walk alone. I walk alone, I walk alone. I walk alone, I walk up. My shadow's only one that walks beside me. My shallow heart's the only thing that's beating. Sometimes I wish someone up there will find me. Till then I walk alone. I walk alone, I walk alone.
Hello, that was about to be another... Oh boy, hold on. We gotta do some mic testing. I don't understand why my mic is so loud. Okay, are we good now? Hold on. Hold on. I think it's okay now? What is going on? This is what happens. So, okay. For some reason, Streamlabs decided it was going to go to some other mic, because I was seeing it go on when the song was playing, and so I don't know, kind of weird. I still don't love how like loud I am, because I'm not talking that loud, and it's like, okay, about right there I think should be okay. Hopefully, this doesn't burst your eardrums at any point in the stream if I, like, talk louder or anything, but yeah, I noticed YouTube did some funny things with, apparently there's, like, crowns and stuff and shit. I don't know what that's about. I don't know. I did see, my friend Becky does blog. She was talking about on her stream, so I'm assuming this is what she saw. I don't know. I'm just gonna, yeah. Apparently, Dakota, you're my top fan, which is not surprising, by the way. It's not surprising. Also, hi, Evie. How are you? We're going to be talking about Cannibal. Well, the Cannibal Dragon's kind of in the name. There's a lot of mysteriousness about the character, I should say. Like, we don't know the origin of Cannibal. We don't know what happened to Cannibal. Cannibal, for spoilers for House of the Dragon, is one of the only dragons to survive the dance, and then dies at some point or vanishes during, it's likely, the reign of Aegon III. very unclear. So we're going to go through it a little bit. This stream is also, I guess, also dedicated to my mod, Cannibal, as well. So hopefully he enjoys this stream. But yeah, we're going to do a little bit of speculation, kind of have a little bit of a chill stream. This is one of those topics that I kind of wanted to do a video on, but sometimes you can already tell what videos won't do well. And so I feel like these are better for, in my opinion, stream topics, because stream topics, it's a more chill environment. I can still have a good time talking about some things that I want to talk about while not also having to put a ton of work into a video that might not do that well because it's Fire and Blood based. I don't make the rules. That's just how it goes. But yeah, so Dakota, what is going on with your stitches? What did you do? How did you get stitches? Also, hi Evie, how are you? I already said that, but you know, I'll say hi to you a second time. Also, enjoying your day off. Glad to hear that. Hopefully you had a great day off, did some fun things, or relaxed, whichever. A tier mod, Dakota, you know, solid mod. He's a solid mod. Not been a mod for that long, though. That's the one thing. Hasn't been a mod that long. He not a vet like you. You know, you've been a mod for a long time. And Evie, you haven't been a mod, I don't think that long either, but you've been on the channel for a very long time. So, you know. So let's talk about a little bit about Cannibal, a little bit of the background. Also, I think chat is probably in a good spot. Let me know if you guys throughout the stream want me to change where chat is, maybe make it smaller, bigger. I'm not sure where I want it yet because, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I want to move it up a little bit or maybe move it where like my laptop screen is. I don't know yet. I don't know. I haven't figured it out yet. I've just kind of introduced chat to being back on screen while we do the live streams. So we'll see. But going to the origin of Cannibal as a wild dragon, which is basically unheard of. There's only a couple that we know of in the time period of Fire and Blood and A Song of Ice and Fire. Well, not A Song of Ice and Fire, but Fire and Blood, where they're untamed dragons. Nobody tames them. All that type of stuff. Cannibal is very much so that way. Like, in terms of Sheep Stealer gets claimed by Nettles and is a little bit more, like, friendly with people. Like, not as much of a, I'll attack you on sight type of thing. Cannibal is much different. Cannibal is very aggressive towards not only people, but other dragons, all that kind of stuff. And so there's been a lot of speculation about where did Cannibal actually come from? Is Cannibal even older than the Targaryens coming to Dragonstone? What is going on with this dragon that seems so different compared to every other dragon that we do know of? And so that's led to a lot of speculation. Now, I myself find this to be a very interesting discussion, given the fact that we do know that dragons were everywhere in the world at one point. They were in Westeros. Could maybe a little bit of a branch of dragons have survived? Or maybe that Cannibal is a different line or maybe a slightly different breed than the Targaryen dragons. This would explain how Cannibal is possibly able to predate the Targaryens. We know that for the most part, the Targaryen dragons live for around like a max of 200 years. If Cannibal predated the Targaryens, likely Cannibal would be older than that. And by the time it vanished, died, whatever. Because Fire and Blood leaves it very open-ended. We don't know anything about what actually happened to this dragon. We don't know its actual, like, fate. So that's what I think is so interesting about Cannibal. But Cannibal, in terms of how it's described, I think is one of the cooler appearances of all the dragons. It has almost like this Balerion feel because Cannibal was black as coal with menacing green eyes. I also kind of have a little bit of a bias given that this dragon is kind of this channel's color scheme. The color scheme of this channel is green and black. So I am a little bit of a fan. Also a very unique dragon. A lot of the other dragons, not as unique. A lot of them die off quite early on because of Targaryen infighting, wars, whatever. Cannibal just keeps cooking. He just keeps churning. But yeah, so we'll talk a little bit more about all of that stuff. I do want to get back to chat a little bit. Shut my finger in an armored truck door at work. That's no good, Dakota. Damn near cut it off. Oh my, Dakota. Sounds like you've had a very interesting time. The desk is getting cluttered. Yeah, so this is something I've been trying out. So I moved my chair down because I was kind of like hunching over when I was trying to read stream and stuff because I was just so much higher than my desk. And the problem that it comes with that is because my chair is lower, my sigils in the background get very much cut off when I do the zoom in. So to try and counteract that, I more or less moved the camera up. But now because of that, it's made it to where like I have to kind of zoom in even further. So it's a whole thing. It's not, the desk isn't as cluttered. It's because it's zoomed in. So we'll see. I'm kind of still playing around with it. We'll see. Hi, Ashley. How are you? Do we know if anyone tried to claim Cannibal? Yes. So Cannibal is interesting because by the time you get to the Dragon Seed section of Fire and Blood, nobody even tries to really tame Cannibal because Cannibal already had the reputation of not letting people try and claim it. So I think that's really interesting to note. Like, it was so foolish to even try. That's what gives Cannibal this really interesting reputation. And really, it makes a lot of people question, why was this dragon so different? Because let's go back here. So if Cannibal had predated the Targaryens, maybe a small little faction of dragons had actually remained around the area of Dragonstone, or just somewhere in Westeros overall, and eventually settled in the area of Dragonstone by the time the Targaryens came over, all that stuff, it would make a lot of sense. Because with the dragons from the Targaryens, a lot of that becomes, okay, well, the dragon eggs are almost being, how should I put this? Dragons are basically being born with the Targaryens and bonded with from almost birth. So a lot of these dragons that are being born, they're not really being able to be like natural dragons. Like, you think about, for instance, so animals in the zoo, those are not natural animals in terms of like, they're not living in wildlife. They're living in captivity, more or less. So they're not necessarily how a lion would behave, for instance. The same, I think, kind of applies for the Targaryens with their dragons. It's a totally different thing because the Targaryens bond with them. And the Targaryens had people to try and supervise their dragons, I guess I should say. Like we see in the show, like with the Dragon Tamers in season 1, for instance, with when you come back to the show after it does this time skip in episode 6, and we see, for instance, the younger kids, you know, Luke and Jace and Aegon and Aemond, and they're like seeing the dragons with these dragon tamers. That's something that if you are Cannibal and you're not from the Targaryens, you don't have that. So you don't have experiences with captivity, for instance. You don't have experiences with humans. You just don't have that. You're a wild, not domesticated dragon at all. And if you even want to go a step further and saying, well, the Targaryens came from Valyria, and Valyria was known for, you know, binding their dragons and it kind of being like this mutual connection between the two. If you're a wild dragon like Cannibal, you just don't have that. So that to me is what I think makes it so interesting, is because of the behavior of Cannibal, it really shows that maybe it isn't like the other dragons. Now, the other part of this that I think is interesting is that Cannibal, based on the reports of the size of Cannibal, never gets as big as dragons like Vhagar or Balerion, yet Cannibal would have been extremely old, you would assume. Even by the time of the dance, Cannibal is not really one of the big dragons, right? Like, it was probably around a size of maybe Vermithor, but it wasn't like one of these huge dragons that everybody would have wanted to tame. It was definitely an experienced dragon. It would have been definitely like middle of the pack, for instance, in terms of size. But it wasn't like anything crazy. And, you know, if you're thinking that Cannibal is much older, why doesn't it ever, you know, get to that size? Because the Targaryen dragons work pretty simply. The older they get, the bigger they get. Like, it's very simple for the most part. The Targaryens is, as long as you, as a dragon, live for a long time, you grow to be very big. That does not seem to be the case with Cannibal. So again, there's a lot of inconsistencies with Cannibal. Is Cannibal just unique? Who knows? Or is Cannibal just a whole different beast in and of itself? And then also then goes to the next idea. Like, Cannibal, not only does it not fit in with the other Targaryen dragons, it actively tries to eat them. Like, it eats younger dragons, it eats dragon eggs, all this other stuff. It's just weird. The behavior doesn't add up if Cannibal had just been bred like the other Targaryen dragons, but Cannibal had just been a bad egg.
The Lannisters send their regards.
That caught me off guard. I'm not gonna lie, that really caught me off guard. Who did the thingy? I'm assuming it was Dakota. Who did the thingy? I can't see. Thank you for gifting a membership, Dakota. Welcome, mainly minimal. Appreciate you. And Dead Rob is back. Hell yes. Don't know why it didn't do the gifting the membership one. I didn't hear it anyway. But I don't know. Maybe it knows that that emote needs to be cut down. But also, Cannibal, yes, we are talking about you. This stream is dedicated to you. Thank you for the compliments on the haircut. I appreciate it. It's a couple days old, but it's just my normal haircut. But thank you, I appreciate it. I really enjoyed the video on Hoster. Yeah, Ashley, it felt like to me like an update video because I'm kind of reading A Storm of Swords now on top of my Clash of Kings reread because I'm getting towards the second half, and so I want to be refreshed on some of the things that are the fallout of A Clash of Kings. And I was kind of getting to that section of the story, as you can kind of tell in that video. I enjoyed making that because, I don't know, I hold the opinion that, okay, yes, I get it that Westeros is a society, especially, and this goes back to medieval times as well, where women don't have a lot of say in their life. They don't have a lot of, oh, you know, I want to marry this person. But I feel like that doesn't excuse Hoster in terms of, oh yeah, well, everybody else is doing it. Like, Hoster goes up and out of his way to kill his own grandchild, put his daughter through crazy amounts of just terrible stuff. And I even pointed out in the comments, like, just because Lysa is soiled, more or less, quote unquote, it doesn't mean she's still not a valuable piece. She's still a Tully. Like, you as a family would love to be allied with one of the great houses of Westeros. It doesn't matter if she's soiled. It's just, I mean, like, yes, is Lysa going to get as great of prospects? Of course not. But can she still marry, like, a Blackwood, a Bracken, maybe a second son, or whatever? Like, she still could have been used as a bargaining chip that I just feel like Hoster Tully's actions are very extreme. Like, oh yeah, I'm not going to help the rebellion unless you also marry, you know, Lysa. Which is crazy. It's just crazy. But, I don't know, Hoster, and that just goes into a whole different thing with Hoster. Hoster is somebody that it's just, you have to marry this person or else. He does this with the Blackfish as well. So, I don't know. It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. Also, yes, apparently Ashley has taken your spot. I don't know how this crown stuff works, but you guys have at it. It makes total sense if Cannibal is not of the Targaryen lineage because Dragonstone was built before Targaryens were there. Targs was one of 40 dragon-riding families. Yeah, agreed. The whole thing that I find is so interesting is, like, we have concrete knowledge that the dragons were on Westeros. Not the Targaryens, but, like, before the Targaryens. So is it possible one of these dragon lines could have survived? I think it's very possible. And given Dragonstone being a very habitable area for dragons, I feel like, of course, that's where the dragons, if there were any remnants left, would go. Now, we're going to talk about another place that I find kind of interesting, but we'll talk about that not much later, but as we get through Cannibal's kind of life and where it possibly could have gone. A lot of people brought up the idea of maybe it went to Skagos, and there's reasoning for that, but we'll look at it a little bit later. Hi, Kara, how are you? Not the size of the dragon, but fighting the dragon. Yes, I agree. It's not all about size, you know. It's about how you know, you can use it in terms of Cannibal. Now, that sounded wrong, but, you know, it's the truth. Grease, did you hear about, sorry, Condell saying that, the throat, yeah, I don't know what was happening there. I just got some phlegm. That saying that in season 2, Alicent realized neither of her sons is suited to rule and she's trying to stop the wheel from spinning. This is the explanation for. So I wasn't actually sure. So I saw this on X. I only saw one person, like, tweet something out, and I thought maybe it was just old, so I didn't really respond to it or anything. But that is a crazy statement to make because that makes no sense at all. It just goes back to the characterization of Alicent at the end of season 1. Alicent quite literally is the person pushing for her sons to be on the throne. She is the one literally prompting this Game of Thrones. She puts the war in motion. If she didn't want the wheel to keep going, back Rhaenyra. It is the clear, like the wheel stops spinning. A female Targaryen goes on the throne is what Viserys wanted, all the stuff. Like, it just goes back to, I think, Ryan Condal having a certain way he views characters like Alicent and Rhaenyra that I just don't understand. I just don't understand how the depiction of the character goes to there. But that's a whole different thing. But that's another good point. 2 points, size determined by the freedom of space, aka the dragons from King's Landing were smaller than the ones in Dragonstone. Great point. That's a great point. I also think something you'd also look at, like, yes, Dragonstone, the dragons would have had more, how would I put this? They had more way to roam, but also Dragonstone is more of a natural place for them in terms of the dragons. So I think that also could have helped with their development. But I don't know. What if Cannibal was warged into by a time-traveling Bran during one of his dreams? Interesting. So, if that is the case, why do you think so? Why do you think that Cannibal was warged into? That's what you have to figure out. Because if that's the case, you would assume, okay, that maybe Bran warged into Cannibal. Cannibal disappears from Dragonstone, that area, goes somewhere else. We don't know what that is, but that's what happened. Also, I did see that it did pop up, the gifted membership, but it was not my normal thing, so I don't know what happened there. But, at least it popped up, at least. Second point, dragons weren't lined up against each other, so it's not like we ever saw Balerion next to Cannibal. That's also true. I will say it's said that Cannibal was not as big as Vermithor or Vhagar. I'm not sure on Vermithor, though. So yeah, I'm looking kind of at I always do this when I do like character stuff, but I kind of have like the wiki of Ice and Fire just open. They have it in here that it being, even though it could have been considered, older or whatever, it was not bigger than Vhagar or Vermithor, which is kind of interesting, given the fact that Cannibal likely was probably older than at least Vermithor, I think. It's an interesting conversation. You are right, Breton. You are right. Hi, Peach. How are you? He's under Winterfell. That's another interesting theory. With the pools, I should say, them being heated and all that. Maybe there's a dragon underneath. I don't know how much evidence there is to suggest that, but I don't know if I'm super far behind, by the way. I keep seeing like the stream playing on my left, and it's like super far behind, but whatever. Doesn't Cannibal kind of give Corlys a salute during Corlys's funeral? I always thought that was interesting. Yeah, so this is another point. We have this weird thing. One of the last times we ever spot Cannibal is at Corlys's death, at his more or less his funeral, and Cannibal like comes out. It almost feels like this movie-tized, or how to put this, like what I would expect House of the Dragon to do, of this version of Cannibal coming out, having a little show, because Corlys was this main character. He was this, huge character in Fire and Blood. But at the same time, we also get like this idea that in Fire and Blood, the Maesters put forth the idea that this is probably not actually what happened, just given the fact that Cannibal ate really anybody that he came into contact with. So why would he do this? Who knows? I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I really believe that Cannibal did that. I think what likely could have happened is that Corlys died, right? He has the funeral happens or whatever, and then maybe Cannibal was spotted, and so it got kind of dramatized. I can't really speak today, especially on big words. And people kind of wrote that down as, oh, Cannibal gave this big thing for Corliss, when in reality, maybe Cannibal was just hunting and he was spotted or something. I don't know. Yeah, you are right, Ashley, though. That is a rumor that we have. The #1 badge holder gets to be the Prince of Pentos. Fair is fair. I gotta see how this top fans things works. Because apparently Dakota has the most XP by 100, but I don't know how you actually get XP. Is there like a thing that tells you? Okay, here we go. A place for fans to stand out in the community. The top 3 gets special badges in live chat. It resets every stream. Oh boy, so you gotta be consistent with this thing. That's what we call that YouTube marketing. Make people come back, I guess. You need to collect experience points or XP. Here's how you get them. You send live chat messages, send super chats, and send super stickers. Okay, well, if you want to be #1, if you want to take down Dakota because you don't like the phrase, I guess you got to put some work in. I don't know what to tell you. Cannibal. No one warged to me. Especially not Bran the Broken. But, yeah. Could the Cannibal be the dead dragon bones in the Red Waste? I mean, yeah, it's definitely possible, Finn. It's just the fact that it's not unheard of seeing dragon bones, like, anywhere. There were dragon bones being found in Westeros. That's how we know that dragons were in Westeros. So seeing them in Essos, which, again, makes even more sense given Valyria and all that stuff. Could it? Yes. Is there much to suggest it is? No, but it's a possibility. It's a possibility. Like, I won't say no, but I won't say yes either. Just not really enough to suggest it. Third point, Cannibal needs more food and to stop just eating other That's a fair point. Now, we don't know, like, what Cannibal's eating habits were besides dragons. Like, eating other dragon eggs and dragons. Like, did he just eat, like, normal stuff as well? Like, did he eat sheep or cows or whatever? Like, I don't know. I'm basing it mostly off the show where Hodor was shown to be normal until being warged into by Bran, after which his personality completely changed. You know, that's possible. That's possible. So I wonder then, so are you suggesting, Breton, that at what point do you think Cannibal is warged into? Do you think it was in terms of it was Cannibal, right? He was very antagonistic, then gets warged into, maybe that's when this whole Corliss thing happens, there's like a change of personality for some reason, vanishes? Or are you suggesting that Bran warging into Cannibal very early on in its life is what made it into what it would become? That's what I'm interested in. How would Cannibal get under Winterfell? I have no idea. I don't know the theory that well into the idea of a dragon being under Winterfell type stuff, just because I've always kind of found it like, I don't know. I don't really see why, but maybe it's something I'll have to do in the future. There's a lot of theories that I haven't covered on the channel that are kind of like that. They're just theories that I just don't really believe much at all, and so I've never really covered them. Like, for instance, I've never covered the Quentin theory that he's actually alive, so maybe we'll have to cover that, but I feel like I've seen a couple people now make videos on it in the last couple months, so I'm kind of like, I don't know. Do you think we'll get an explanation for Cannibal's mysterious disappearance in Fire and Blood Volume 2, or will it remain a mystery? So, Breton, I think to an extent it will remain a mystery. I think that the way George has it set up is that likely what we'll see is George will give us the classic, this is what could have happened, or maybe it was this, or maybe it was that. What do you think happened based on the context clues? That's what I think George is going to give us. Because I don't think anybody killed Cannibal. I think Cannibal, this is the interesting part. If the dragons stopped hatching, more or less, and you have this point where there's not as many dragons, because a lot of them die out during the dance, is it maybe that Cannibal leaves Dragonstone because there's no more dragons? Like, maybe he's like, well, there's no food left here. Let me go somewhere else. Maybe I need to go to Valyria, or maybe I just need to find a new home because I'm being disturbed by all these humans. I think that it will remain a mystery. I don't think it'll be as simple as something like Cannibal was killed somehow. You know, maybe it could be that Cannibal died of old age. That's possible, I guess, but it also is weird that Cannibal just vanishes. That's what we have right now in the lore. Is that Cannibal just vanishes. We don't know what happened. So, fish. Okay. Yeah, I could see Cannibal eating fish. That makes sense. Okay, I got you, Breton. I got you. That could make sense. Not to switch the topic back to Hoster, but there's apparently a theory that Hoster wasn't actually confessing his guilt for his actions towards Lysa. He was confessing guilt for forcing a what? Mistress to abort his bastard. A channel called Bend the Knee did a video on it. I feel like I've heard of that channel a while ago. I just don't remember hearing. I don't remember seeing in their content recently, but interesting. It doesn't really seem to add up though, given the fact that Catelyn suggests that Hoster would not be the type of person to go whoring, for instance. And yes, we know Catelyn maybe isn't the best judge of character at times, but like she picks up on Hoster, or not Hoster, Edmure right away doing this stuff. I don't know if Hoster necessarily, I mean, it makes sense given the character that he would have done it, but there isn't much information that I can think of that would suggest that's the case. Like even the person that he seems to be referencing Lysa. There's no record of this woman that Hoster's like muttering on his deathbed. So I'd have to look into it. I just thinking about it myself, I don't really have any information that I think would back that up. Bran is a cannibal, so it would make sense. Personally, I don't think warging a dragon is possible because it seems like it would be a loophole in the dragon bonding. I can see that as well. I think the real question, the interesting part is, what if a dragon isn't bonded? Like it doesn't have any type of bonding to it. So for instance, if Cannibal is a wild dragon and we don't know how Cannibal actually works, could Cannibal then have different rules for how do you tame it? Like, could it have been forced to be tamed by someone like Bran with warging? Who knows? But I do think it opens up an interesting like idea. If Daenerys is tied deeply to Drogon, can then Bran get into Drogon and try to manipulate the dragon? I would assume it'd be something along the lines of Bran would have to have a insane power to do so. Like it'd be one of the hardest things you could possibly warg. Like kind of how we're seeing with Varamir in the opening of A Dance with Dragons, where he kind of talks about this kind of stuff. I think that a dragon would be very difficult to do. It would take a lot of power and control, but I don't think so. It's true. Bran has a lot of foreshadowing to cannibalism. Even if you think about the stuff we get at the Night Fort, like he also has a story about guest ride and also cannibalism. It kind of connects into the Red Wedding stuff. So yeah, I think there's some interesting stuff there with Bran in terms of the relation of cannibal and if that relates then to the dragon. I don't buy into it either, but I was reminded of it while watching your video. Well, fair. Fair is fair. So let's continue on. Now, Cannibal is interesting because we don't really have much of this dragon really until it becomes relevant. All we know about Cannibal is it was taking out all these dragon eggs and these younger dragons, and nobody would ever try to, well, people would try to tame it, but it would go really, really badly. And that's what we know. Now, when we get to the time of the dragon seeds, the dragon riders, all that stuff, people straight up didn't even try. They didn't even try to bother with Cannibal because they knew how bad of an idea it would be. So, for instance, even people would go for like Sheep Stealer. Eventually, Grey Ghost, the other wild dragon, would actually be killed. This would have a whole different plot. That's major spoilers for House of the Dragon, so I won't mention it too much here. The point to be said, though, is Cannibal is the only wild dragon left at Dragonstone after the dance. The only one. Which is quite interesting as well, because what would then Cannibal do? Like what would Cannibal do in that situation where it's the only wild dragon? It's by far at this point the biggest dragon as well. It's really interesting. I don't know. But at this point, so we do have the after then of the dance. There's not many dragons left, and then all of a sudden, it just vanishes. It's never seen again. We have no, like, so for instance, the Sheep Stealer, we have rumors, speculation of where Sheep Stealer could have gone to, of going to the Vale. of going to live in the mountains more or less, which makes sense for a dragon, right? That seems like a prime spot. And also would make sense as to why Sheep Stealer could have stayed hidden for so long. With something like, well, Cannibal, albeit not the biggest dragon in the world, very noticeable dragon, is quite sizable. How does it just vanish? Now, is this a case of we don't have Fire and Blood Part 2, so this is yet to be determined? Or is it something else? Now, the massive theory, the biggest theory I've seen for this is that Cannibal went to Skagos. Why would Cannibal go to Skagos, you might be asking? Face value doesn't make sense. Cannibal going to the deep north, a place that would be the opposite of Dragonstone, would be very cold. Why go there? The only evidence I can find for this is we're told that the Skagosi like to trade in like obsidian daggers and things of that nature. Where do they get those? And if that is the case, that they are getting these obsidian daggers or whatever, and they're selling them to others, does that mean there's volcanic activity on Skagos? Are they raiding this stuff? Or maybe they had a surplus of it from years in the past. Again, they did do raiding on like territory north of the wall. Could they have found caches and maybe they've been selling that? But that seems like, wouldn't that run out at some point? Why is this something that George gives us for Skagos? That, oh yeah, they sell like obsidian type wares. And if it is volcanic, if there is a similarity to Dragonstone, would Cannibal go there? And again, you have to go with the idea that Cannibal is a different breed of dragon, or at least is a different line than the Targaryen dragons. You can go as far as saying, well, Cannibal had a completely different buildup. It was fine with living in the cold. We don't have anything to really say that that's the case, just given the fact that when dragons were roaming Westeros, we know they were roaming Westeros. They were pretty much everywhere. So could some of these dragons have adapted to living in the cold? Possibly. I mean, that's not something that we can discount. There's no reason to say that that isn't the case. But when you think about where we've heard of, dragons living predominantly, it is in warmer, hotter climates. If you do want to make the idea, well, okay, we never find Cannibal's body. Like, nobody ever stumbles upon Cannibal's body that they know of, unless it's like a dragon, like in the Red Waste, like somebody brought up earlier in chat. It would make sense how Cannibal could hide out for so long, because nobody wants to go to Skagos. Skagos is very mysterious, so you could possibly see where, if they're, Skagos is also described as being very mountainous, why Cannibal would find it very appealing. Think about also Sheep Stealer. Sheep Stealer goes to the Vale. The Vale is also quite cold as well during winter. So there's some things to question here. There's definitely some things to question of like, could this be the case? My one rationale, I'd say, is why Skagos, in terms of like, why, if you're George, make Cannibal, this very mysterious dragon, just disappear and go to a place like Skagos? And I don't think Cannibal is alive. Wherever Cannibal is, I think Cannibal's dead. I mean, we'd be talking, if you believe not only that Cannibal predates the Targaryens, Cannibal at this point would be over 300 years. 300 years old, likely. So, is it possible? Yeah. I don't think that it's necessarily a bad theory at all. I think we don't have any information really at all to go off of, and it's definitely a theory that works out. It makes sense. I think the other theory is the obvious one of, well, Cannibal went out looking for more dragons to eat. Where do you go? You go to Valyria. Valyria possibly having, we know it still has dragon-like creatures, but maybe not dragons itself. That would be appealing to Cannibal. Cannibal liked eating baby dragons and things. Maybe that's where Cannibal goes. Once again, would fit into the idea that nobody ever sees Cannibal again. That, I think, is really relevant. So those are the main two theories, in my opinion. The main two theories are Cannibal either went to Valyria or went to Skagos. The third idea, which I think is what happened, but I don't know how likely it is, because Cannibal, I think, died of old age. That would be my guess. We never see or hear anything of these dragon fights in something like The World of Ice and Fire, for instance. We don't see that with Cannibal. There's no sightings of Cannibal. Maybe Cannibal just died somewhere and nobody reported finding its bones or anything. Like that's just, I think, is weird to me. So either Cannibal died in a very remote location or it went somewhere else that people didn't say anything. There were no rumors about it. Like, think about in the main story. We hear rumors of Daenerys' dragons very early on in the story. Like, people learn about her dragons being a thing. If Cannibal was spotted, especially after the Targaryens basically have lost all their dragons, that's a big deal. Like, that's a huge deal. Cannibal would be one of the last remaining dragons in the world. So, find that very suspicious. Is it just because George has not written Fire and Blood Part 2, so we don't know? Or is it something more than that? I don't know. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on where do you think Cannibal went? What was Cannibal's fate? I was going to stick up for my boy Hoster and say Lysa was always kind of crazy. It was scummy of him to marry her off to Jon Arryn, but I don't think she would have been happy with anyone but Littlefinger. See, I don't agree with that. I think that Lysa was, especially the idea that I don't think Lysa was crazy. I think Lysa is very similar, in my opinion, to someone like Sansa. She is somebody growing up with a lot of privilege. She is somebody that probably would have believed in a lot of like these fairy tales and things of that nature. I think that Lysa, if she had just been married off to like more of a handsome husband of her own age where she could be happy and actually have children, especially a lot of you guys brought up, it was probably the Arryns that had the issues of fertility, all that stuff. If she had her own kids of her own that were healthy, she didn't have multiple stillborns, multiple struggles with having children, I think she would have forgotten about Littlefinger. I don't think Littlefinger would have been all that relevant. The reason Littlefinger is so relevant is given Hoster's actions against Littlefinger, also, his own actions against his own daughter, and then having Hoster, send her over to the to the Vale and then to King's Landing. It's that whole idea of, okay, Lysa's very unhappy with her life. Littlefinger is still actively basically trying to pursue her and manipulate her more or less. And Lysa, of course, if this is her childhood crush or whatever, the person that had her first child with, well, could have, it's gonna make you go crazy. It just is. It's going to. It's gonna get to you. Bran will be the final. I started reading it and then it went down. The final enemy of the story, in my opinion. I could definitely see that. I could see it as like us, the readers, view Bran as a villain, but the characters in the story don't. So we end on the story in a spot where Bran is in a position of sizable power when he shouldn't be. Like, he's very much being manipulated by the old gods, by the children of the forest, Bloodraven, all that kind of stuff. But the characters in the story just believe Bran is a force of good and all that stuff. So it ends on kind of like a bitter note. I could see something like that happening. That's fair, Cannibal. That's a good retirement party. You know what's crazy, Breton? This exact idea that you just brought up, I quite literally thought about last night. Because I was like kind of thinking about how I wanted to talk about Cannibal in today's stream. And it got me thinking about Skagos. And it's like, Skagos is an interesting place because nobody ever goes there. We have so little information on it. Like, is it more that people just create these rumors about Skagos? Like, maybe there's a couple older tribes or whatever that have still these rumors of doing all this stuff. And that means, all of Skagos does it. I've kind of thought about that. There isn't a lot that we can go off of, but dragons in Hardhome? I don't know if I've heard the theory of dragons in Hardhome. What is the theory for dragons being in a Hardhome? I don't think I've heard that one before. Cannibal, you may be live in the you may be alive in the stream. I don't think you're unfortunately alive in the story. Agreed. We don't know if Nettles was a Targaryen. Is it possible? Yes. It could have been the idea that Maybe she was from somewhere in Essos, but then maybe somewhere down the line, somebody, slept with Nettles' mother or grandmother, whoever. It's possible. How could a woman be happy with someone with little fingers? I mean, maybe they use it right. I don't know. I don't know, Dakota. I don't know. Yeah, Lysa in the show, I feel like is a bit more unhinged. Like, don't get me wrong, Lysa is still a bit mentally unstable in the show or in the book, of course. I think in the book, it's even more so. I think in the book, it reads much more like Lysa is a tragedy of Littlefinger's manipulation and her circumstance, albeit she does make bad decisions as well. But I don't know. It's a whole thing. This is another question. So, Ashley, I wrote this down for a video idea. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this because I probably will make a video on this at some point. So, I'd love to hear as many viewpoints on this as possible. But she asked, I want to know why Osha was comfortable taking Rickon to Skagos. Now, this is a great question because everything we know of Skagos, why would you ever take a Stark there? The Stark and Skagosi people literally had conflict less than 100 years before the events of the main story. During Daeron II's reign, a Stark dies fighting the Skagosi. So why would you go there? They're not the most loyal of people, so why go there? So the problem you run into is if you're Osha, who do you take Rickon to? Well, right away you're thinking maybe the Umbers, maybe the Karstarks, maybe, whoever. But then as the story unravels, okay, Robb, well, he kills the Lord Karstark. Not a great place to send Rickon. The Umbers, after the Red Wedding, uncertainty in their alliance, or allegiance, I should say. Maybe not the best place to take them. You can't really go west because that's where the Greyjoys were attacking you at Deepwood Mott, being occupied by Asha, Moat Cailin, by Victarion. You had raiding along that coast. So obviously, after Winterfell falls, you're going to head, east. You're going to head maybe north. You don't necessarily want to take Rickon to the Wall because they can't really protect Rickon. Like, say, the Boltons came to take Rickon, you're screwed. You don't have the men to fight against that. Okay, so where do you take him? I mean, you're not going to take him south either because you have the Boltons, you have the Dustins, again, not certain on their loyalties. So maybe you think, let's go to Skagosi. We can hide out. Maybe that's the idea. Nobody's going to come looking for Rickon and Skagos, even though it is a hugely, hugely big risk. Now, the other thing I think is interesting is how did Osha even get to Skagos, given the fact that Rickon had his wolf with him and would have sent off massive red flags that this is a Stark? That's another thing I question. How did Osha necessarily get to Skagos? And then did somebody recognize them in Skagos? Are they still hiding out? What's happening? That's what is so interesting to me. Hardhome has volcanoes, so the theory is Dragon's Roost is Dragon Roost in any volcano? Okay, I get you. So okay, okay. I can see that then. I can see that. Same idea of Skagos having volcanic type stuff makes sense. Okay, thank you guys for the Hardhome lore. I don't really know much about Hardhome and its lore and the history. I will say, a lot of where my knowledge is lacking is in the histories, pre-Targaryen era, talking before then. I don't know a ton about the deep histories of it. Do you think the Celtigars once rode giant crabs? They're never mentioned as having been dragon riders, even though they're Valyrians, and their sigil is a crab. I just think that they were probably just like a lesser bannerman, I guess you would say, but I don't think that's the correct term for Valyria. It could have just been that they were a major, like, fishing type of people with crabs and stuff. I don't think they actually did. Is Osha from Skagos? I don't believe so. She, I believe, is a wildling. I don't know if there's some conflicting evidence to say that she could be from Skagos. Let's do a little research. Let's look up Osha on the wiki and just see what they have down for her origin. If there is any, any evidence of possibly she could be there, and maybe that's why. Maybe she's had dealings with the Skagosi being a wildling. Maybe there's some sort of dealings there that she believed. Maybe they're not so bad. Maybe we can take Rickon there. A lot of questions. A lot of questions I have on that plotline. And I also find it a weird plotline because if you're George and you're trying to simplify the plot, if you're trying to bring the plot together to finish the series, like, why not just have that Wex ends up leading the Manderleys to where Osha and Rickon were? And so you just, like, you avoid having to do the whole Davos side plot, which might even happen off screen. Okay, let me see if there's an origin that we get specifically from where she's from. We know she says she's a wildling. Not a lot into her actual, like, yeah, on the wiki they don't have much about her pre-Game of Thrones history. So it's possible. I'll leave the door open. Maybe she's from Skagos. Maybe she knows people from Skagos. That could be a possibility. I think Osha might be Skagosi herself, but was kidnapped and raised amongst the wildlings after they raided her village, so she knew she'd be safe there. Maybe she's from an esteemed family. Interesting. That could make sense. It could also maybe make sense as to why she was trying to get south of the wall as well. I mean, on the face value, because of the others, of course, but also maybe the idea that she was trying to go home to Skagos at some point. Could be the case. The one thing I really wonder, though, is, like, why doesn't Osha, like, bring this up at any point? Like, why doesn't she talk about Skagos being a possible place they could go to? That's something that I think is interesting to me. And, of course, the book and the show are quite different in terms of where we see Osha's journey go. Like, in the show, they give us a lot more time with Osha than in the book. So, I don't know. That's fair, Breton, on the Celtigars, I should say. Okay. I like the idea. I like the thought process that Osha possibly is from Skagos, and that's why she goes there. It's possible. But yes, so the Skagosi people and also the wildlings had a lot of conflicts, more or less. Yes, Theory of Ice and Fire. She's 100% from that administration, 100%. It's just like Crowfoot Umber's daughter who was kidnapped during a wildling raid. Yeah, I think that makes sense. That could definitely be a possibility. The other possibility could be that she didn't intentionally take him to Skagos. Maybe the idea was they were going to go somewhere else. They stop in Skagos, or maybe they wreck on Skagos. We know that there are rumors about the Skagosi basically trying to get ships to wreck on their island and things of that nature. Might be slander, might not be. That could be a possibility as well. Possibly it wasn't that Osha meant for them to end up there, but they did. I don't know. That's true, Breton. Like, that's the thing. We don't know the full picture of Skagos really in the modern A Song of Ice and Fire time. There's just nothing on them. Like, we know what they were like in the past to some degree, but some theories suggest that the Skagosi are basically settled wildlings themselves. It is interesting. I mean, we also have theories, or not theories, we have rumors that the Skagosi people still sacrifice people to the old gods, so there's also that as well. So But yeah. So that is probably going to be the stream. I don't really have much else I want to talk about on Cannibal. I thought we had some good discussions. We had some good stuff to talk about with possible video ideas in the future that I've kind of been thinking about doing. I hope you guys all enjoyed the stream. Let me know how you guys feel about chat, where it is at the moment. Let me know if you guys want me to change it, put it somewhere, make it smaller, whatever. Still trying to mess around with it. I might, for future streams, I didn't have time to do it for this stream. I might have like some things at the bottom. Just for what the video basically is, all that kind of jazz. But yeah, I hope everybody has a great rest of their day. Thank you for everybody that stopped in, and I will see y'all in the next one.